Well, here we are, and welcome to the garden at the Urban Farming Institute here in Oakland Park. And today being Saturday, one of the big things that we do for our gardeners is to create a tea brew. And this is a garden tea, and I'm going to show you how we do that here. Now, we do it on a larger scale with an airlift brewer and just a lot of stuff, and it takes time, and it's just wonderful product though. But if you're a gardener here, you get this product every week, almost every week, unless of course it rains, in which case we don't make it. But it's a really good product. So what I'm going to show you today is how you can do the same sort of structure at home, but using a 5-gallon bucket and some very basic ingredients. And I'm going to go over the ingredients list with you as well, so you can follow along. And if you have a piece of paper or you want to take some notes, that might be a good idea as well. We've had a lot of response to this video, so we thought, well, gee whiz, let's do it on Facebook Live and see what we can do with that. Behind the phone today, we're practicing high-level phonography. We have Jeff, and Jeff is going to hand me that blue lid that is just immediately to his left. Very good, thank you, Jeff. And so let's get started with a very basic approach. One of the things that we use here is of course, a 5-gallon bucket. We use non-chlorinated water, and you can either make that by letting air bubble through the water for a while, or just take a bucket of water and let it sit overnight, and the chlorine will evaporate. We're using a pump, a very heavy-duty pump, a very small pump, but it's a very utilitarian pump, and the type of pump that we use here at the Urban Farming Institute. One of the things that we want to caution you about is the idea that many recipes on the internet are compost tea recipes. Now, this is a great idea. If you're making your own compost and you know what is in your compost and you're very comfortable with the process, then that's a wonderful thing. Go ahead and use that. But if you're not sure, if you're thinking that, gee whiz, I think I'll go get something in a large black bag down at the big box store, probably not your best choice. So because we want to keep things here as clean as we possibly can, we don't use any animal products. All we're going to show you how to do today is use earthworm castings. And this is a bag of earthworm castings, and this is really a great source of fungus in the brew, and I'm going to show you how we put that together here. This is an Airstone, and you can see in this bucket here we have 2 Airstones. One we're going to use just a little bit larger stone that is going to be there for just the general aeration of the tea, and then this Airstone here, we're going to actually put that into the bag of earthworm castings. So I'm going to show you how we can do this. Now, these bags are available at the big box store or paint stores. These are just simply paint strainers, and they're going to cost about $1 a piece or something like that. It's not a very expensive process. I'm going to do a little something here that I do not recommend, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to move this pump, and you'll be able to see that. This is the pump that we're using, and I'm going to sit it over here because my air line is just a little too short. So I'm going to sit that down here. Wasn't that an exciting bit of video there? I'm telling you what. You know, we spare no expense in the production department of videos here at the Urban Farming Institute. So what you do is then you take this Airstone and you just put it down into the earthworm castings. And then what I like to do, I use a tie wrap. Some people like to use string, perfectly good. For me, you know, I'm kind of lazy. So I like to use tie wraps, and they work out really very well, and they're very inexpensive, and there we go. So what we have in here is about a pound of earthworm castings. Some will say, well, gee whiz, you need to have a lot more than that. Well, there we go. There we go. There we go. Now, one of the things about your pump is that you're going to want to make sure that you keep your air well running into the bucket. And so this is our first ingredient. And this is going to be an important first step. The period of the brew is going to be about 24 hours. And in order to get the microbes, the biology that is going to be contained within the brew, it's important to feed those guys. And one of the secrets that we've learned here after doing this for nearly 10 years is that you want to feed these guys twice. So we feed them twice. We feed them once at the beginning of the brew, and we feed them molasses. Now this molasses, because it's kind of slow, I actually put that in a cup of warm water, and hopefully that will speed up the process of adding this. This is about 2.5 ounces or so of molasses, and we'll just pour that right in there. And there's really not much more that you need to do. Try to get as much of the molasses as possible out of the beaker, but you don't have to use the beaker. This is just something we had in the lab. So I happen to like beakers, and so there you go. So you can see that that's going to work pretty well, and we'll put that back into, see if I can get all of that out of there. Now, if you have somebody who knows how to make molasses cookies, oh, there's Cassie. Hi, Cassie. Cassie knows how to make molasses cookies, so.
Get busy.
And in Broward County, it just started last night, or actually this morning at 12:01. We have a requirement for face masks if we're interacting with the general public. And of course, you want to be very, very certain that you keep your social distancing underway. And we're doing that here as we're making that video. So just, a little bit of cautionary tale. Thank you to the mayor of Fort Lauderdale, Dean Trantalis. He's the guy that started that, and then it went over to the county administrator, Bertha Henry, and then it went county-wide. So that was a real good thing to do. So here we go. So now we have our food, and we're now feeding the microbes that are going to be developing off of the earthworm castings. Earthworm castings are a hugely powerful source of nitrogen. It's a slow release nitrogen into your garden. And if you're thinking about adding earthworm castings to your garden, which is a good thing to do, it's about 1 pound for every 10 square feet. And you just sort of broadcast them around and then water them in, and you have earthworm castings. One of the other things that we put into the brew is seaweed. And if you hang around UFI at all, you're going to know we talk a lot about seaweed. And this is a combination of seaweed and fish. And we think this is a really powerful addition to a homemade compost tea. In fact, the tea that is going out into the gardens here at UFI today has seaweed and it has fish. So I'm going to add this now. When you think about fish, there are two kinds of fish that are very common, and the cheap guy is known as fish emulsion. Now this has been around for a very, very long time, and probably not your best choice, because I'll tell you, it stinks. It really stinks. Now if you like the smell of fish, well then use that stuff, but we don't. We use a fish hydrolysate, and the difference here is the difference between cold pressed extra virgin olive oil and then the cheaper brands, which are going to be the heat pressed. So you get all the enzymes and good things that are part of the structure of the fish, and they're into the seaweed. Now what I'm putting in here is about 1/4 cup. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's about 2 ounces. And just sort of rinse that out a little bit. And there you go. So far so good, looks good. And then just for the fun of it, one of the things that people want to add to their garden because, well, gee whiz, and you see this all the time, CalMag. The challenge that you have when you're thinking about calcium, that's the calcium part of the magnesium. The calcium part is probably sufficiently abundant in the soils of your garden. The challenge that you have is the pH of your soil allowing that chemical to actually make it into the plant, where it can do all of the good things that calcium does. Calcium is hugely mobile in a plant. So you just want to start thinking about, do I really need to add calcium? Probably not. We would recommend that you don't. So, but on the other hand, we do like the idea of from time to time adding a product that we call here kieserite. Now there's a very interesting sort of thing about kieserite. You probably never heard of kieserite, but you know, if you go to the grocery store, you can actually buy kieserite. It's pretty inexpensive, but the challenge is, well, it's probably not as pure as kieserite. You know, kieserite occurs not only on Earth, but guess what? It also occurs in our solar system. So here we go. Here's a little message about Mars. You know, without the presence of... So here we go. So we're going to add kieserite. Now, kieserite was found on Mars, and kieserite would not have existed on Mars unless there had been the presence of water. So this is really an important sort of thing. This is known as magnesium sulfate. You can buy it in the grocery store, the pharmacy. You can get it wherever you would like to, pretty much everywhere. And it's very inexpensive. The product that we use here is really an agricultural grade, so it doesn't have a lot of bad stuff in it. It is just really very, very pure. And when you put it into water, it just completely dissolves. So I'm going to put about 1 ounce of kieserite into our brew. I would not recommend doing this every time, but for the purposes of our demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that concludes the ingredients for this particular type of tea. What's very good about this is that if you go on YouTube or the internet, you're going to find all kinds of recipes for teas. Some are going to be very, very complicated. Some are going to have some real serious plumbing opportunities there that will require you to go to the store, and they're beautiful things and they work really, really well. But on the other hand, if you're kind of like me and you want to create a tea and you want to do it quickly and inexpensively, well, use a 5-gallon bucket. You know, we talk about that the 5-gallon bucket really is the most versatile tool that you can have in your garden, and here it is being used to brew tea. So I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. One, be sure to put the top on. It's going to be very important because about 24 hours from now, this will turn into a ball of foam, and if you don't have a lid on it, it will spill onto your counter or onto the floor, and it could possibly stain. So I always like to keep a lid at least loosely fitted so you can get good air exchange. The other thing is that I want to share this thought with you, something that you do not want to forget, and keep it in mind that when I ask the question, what is the best day to plant a seed? The answer is always going to be today. So until next time, plant a seed, and we'll see you soon.